Mr. Chris Fletcher. Chris, say hello.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Zach.
Oh, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about a couple of classics today, which I'm excited about because I rediscovered one of these recently in a blind taste test. But before we get to all that, let's talk a little bit about Jack Daniels. What do you have going on right now? What do you want to tell the people out
Well, I think a lot of different where to start. What's going on in Lynchburg?
there?
It starts here at the distillery. So I'm here. This is my office. So I don't know how well you can see over my shoulder, but there's the distiller somewhere over there. Um, and it's obviously a 24/7 operation, and so we're continually growing, and we're excited to be working on expansion right now as we speak. It continues to be a great time to be making American whiskey, and so we're really excited here. We've done a lot of great things. I know a lot of people have been talking about some of the things that we've released in the last couple of years. Some of them limited, and I understand that sometimes can be hard to find, but not everything's been limited. We just launched a new bottle and bond whiskey, our rye bottle and bond whiskey. But with all these new things that have come from Jack Daniels, it's really refreshing, I think, to spend a few minutes this afternoon talk about a couple of our classics, which is our Gentleman Jack Tennessee whiskey, and really one of my absolute favorites, and I find a bit of a go-to for me is our single barrel select.
Absolutely, yeah. And let's dive right in here because Gentleman Jack is something that I think a lot of people might walk past on the shelf. It's one of those, it's one of the bottles that you might have seen on your grandparents' shelf, or maybe at your parents' backyard party. But I feel like it's had a big resurgence because people are sort of drawing back from those huge ABV beasts and finding these much easier, smoother, softer drinking whiskeys again. So walk us through a little bit of the process. What makes Gentleman Jack Gentleman Jack?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it starts with our whiskey or our bourbon recipe. So it's 80% corn, 12 malted barley, and 8% rye. Um, and I'm a stickler about process, and I love to talk about process. I won't go too
Yeah,
far, but everything's obviously done here to the highest standards, and I think that's one of the things our greatest advantage here at Jack Daniels is our distillery. How we're turning that grain into whiskey. We're mashing it with our cave spring water, which is just that way, well out of view of your screen. But all that cave water is used only to make whiskey in our mashing and fermentation process, and so grinding that grain using the natural malted barley enzymes to break down the starches to fermentable sugars. Of course, I know you like to mention our micro lab, your favorite parts, and one of mine too. And
yeah.
but we're still cultivating our yeast that we can date back to Prohibition time here with a full time microbiologist, and
Wow.
this on all copper double distillation process with a column and a pot, all copper distillation. Charcoal mellowing, of course, comes after distillation when the spirit is clear right off the still, then into the barrel to age, and then of course the barrel is going to give it all that color, right? And the
Yeah.
gentleman's kind of a golden hue, honey gold,
Honey,
not
yeah.
dark.
Get a nice honey.
Yeah, yeah, kind of honeyed sweetness. That's a really, really good way to describe Gentleman Jack. I think just kind of that honeyed, almost floral, honeyed fruit. You know,
Yeah, okay. I can get a
yeah,
little floral in there.
yeah, a little
It's
floral, a honeysuckle. Just kind of
yeah, and it's
fruity.
very orchard forward, like spring, summer orchard fruit as well. It's not, it's not winter fruit. It's not dark.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all. Yeah, just really fresh. That's the way I describe Gentleman Jack a lot is fresh, and the reason why the color is a little
Right.
bit. This is between 4 and 5 years old for us. And when the whiskey comes out of the barrel, typically for an old number seven, we're going to immediately bottle that. But with Gentleman Jack, this is where it kind of creates its own statement because we filter it through another 3 feet of the maple charcoal that we make here at the distillery. And so that charcoal, the whole reason of charcoal filtration, it's a removal process, right? Think of it if
Right.
you water filter at home. When you run your water through that water filter, there's charcoal inside. Well, that's not adding flavor to the water, right? That's taking things out of the water, and that's what the charcoal does for our whiskey. And so, the whiskey goes through and it's clear; it doesn't get any color at all from the charcoal. The color all comes from the barrel. So then, when we put it through 3 more feet after the barrel, it's going to actually pull a little bit of the color out, right? The
Right.
barrel. So that color is literally oak wood, right? Those barrels
Yeah,
are oak. And so
yeah,
by taking
that's
that out, that's going to change the mouthfeel. It's going to change the flavor a little bit. It'll also absorb a little bit of acidity. There is some acid in white oak wood, and so some of that will be absorbed by the charcoal as well. So that leads us to this really smooth, or as we say, mellow charcoal mellowing aspect to Gentleman Jack whiskey. And I find it extremely approachable, like what you just mentioned. If anyone is asking for a smooth whiskey, I'll always start them with Gentleman Jack.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
This
there's just so many familiar notes there on the nose. You can pick out this immediately, the honey, the fruit. And if you want to go ahead, I think I've talked enough. We'll jump in.
yeah, yeah. Cheers. Hmm. It really is just. It's what my grandfather always used to say. It's almost too easy to drink.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
got such a nice softness to it. Like I see what you're saying when you're talking about the extra filtration. That mouth feel,
Hmm.
it's silky, it's luscious. But you're still getting, for me anyway, I'm still getting that bright sort of like stone fruit, honey, a little bit of floral, maybe a little bit of spice bark in there. Still getting a little bit of that oak aging 4 or 5 years. A touch of vanilla maybe, but it's for me like the fruit almost starts going into a little bit of like a cake territory. So it's like an orange cake or a lemon pie or something like that. Like it's takes a little bit of sweetness to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, that's where the honey starts to pop a little bit too.
Yeah,
But like fruit drizzle, and then the oak, I agree. Oak pop in the mid palate. It's a soft oak though. You can pick some kind of soft, sweet spices in there, but I think it just stays soft all the way through. And then the finish, I mean, yeah, there's a little alcohol in kind of the back of your throat, but it's not a big finish at all.
no,
I think one of the hallmarks of our Tennessee whiskeys is how versatile they are. And of course, we do a whole wide range of flavors within our Tennessee whiskey, right? I mean, and we're gonna jump to a very different flavor profile here in just a second.
yeah,
But I like to always call out, it's really great with Gentleman Jack because you could do just a highball with ice,
mm,
club soda, and a squeeze of lime. I mean, that's really nice in the summer. And then, believe it or not, in my house,
cold.
my wife and I, we love it neat, and especially
Yeah,
when it's get cold. Um, just pouring a small glass and kind of warming it with your hands a bit, and then you really get that honeyed fruit and kind of that sweet aroma to really pop out, on the nose. We find ourselves, actually going to grab Gentleman Jack a little bit more even in the cold months. So it's
what's interesting is
no
sort of
wrong
like
way. Sponsor.
yeah, no wrong way for sure. But what's interesting is as it sort of settles in my senses, it's starting to feel like almost a bridge to like Highland malt a little bit with all that floral honey and the fruit. Like I could see converting some Scotch lovers to American whiskey with this one because there's some parallels in there that are familiar, but it has that little bit more depth from an American whiskey, from the corn and from the sort of, like a little, like I said, you get that little bit more wood spice in there and that little bit more of that vanilla coming through on the back end.
Mhm.
It's really, like I said, I've come back around to it because as you know, we both have to sample so many different whiskeys and things like that for work. Um, I come back around to stuff like this because, like you said, you can drink it neat and it's so nice, just easy going. You're delivered a wonderful profile that gives you a beautiful finish. The nose is there, and it just works.
Absolutely, it's a crowd pleaser. It
Yeah,
absolutely. Uh, you
and
can take a bottle of Gentleman Jack to any holiday gathering, and you'll be welcome. Promise.
absolutely, and it's priced well. I mean, it's a high quality product that you can find still, which is getting harder and harder when you're considering whiskey of this quality. Which does take me to the next bottle, which is the classic single barrel, which is my actual home pour. So if I have friends over after dinner we'll pour a bottle or a bottle, sorry, a glass of the single Jack Daniel's single barrel because it never misses. So can you
Yeah.
walk us through a little bit about how the single barrel came to be? I'm also curious about the bottle design because it is a unique bottle, and so can you do a little A/B there?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I'll do my best history lesson. How about that? You have to remember that Jack Daniel's Single Barrel was launched when I was 16 years old.
Right,
I
right,
was
right.
I was not consulted at all.
You weren't
um,
in the lab.
right now, it wasn't. No, I was. It was that was about 3 years before I started working here at the distillery for my time.
So was
Uh,
this was under your grandfather's management then when he was master distiller?
Not the single barrel, the Gentleman Jack.
Okay,
Yes,
right.
barrel. That
Okay,
that Jimmy Bedford.
gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, cool. It's amazing. Even on the nose on this already, we're in a whole different world.
Whole different world, but same process, same recipe. The only process difference with the single does not get the second mellowing. So the Gentleman Jack gets the second mellowing, and you could probably even, yeah, you can
Oh
see
yeah,
a lot lighter with the
yeah,
Gentleman than what I have. Yeah, I think I poured it a little heavier than you. Sorry.
yeah. I've got that mini Clarence and everything's. But yeah,
Um,
it's got a the nose is all just immediately there's a deeper sort of like holiday cake spiciness to it with a little touch of woodiness. So what's the age usually on these?
so these are going to bounce between 5 and 7 generally for our barrels.
Okay.
Sometimes I've seen it get to 8 for sure, but single barrel whiskeys were only the very top floor of the barrel house, um,
Right.
because that top floor is going to heat rises, right? So in the summers, we don't pump heat in or air condition barrel houses. We let them get nice and hot, and so that heat is going to rise up and concentrate in that top floor, and so that's where you're going to get that when that clear whiskey goes in. Alcohol is very reactive to heat; it will expand. And it'll literally soak into the pores of the wood and pull more color and more flavor out, and so all those kind of rich notes that you're getting from that brand new toasted and charred oak barrel, toasted marshmallow notes, butterscotch,
Mm. Oh yeah.
molasses, even a lot more
Yeah.
contextual notes that you're going to get. That is all about that barrel and how
You know
good
what?
coopers do making our barrels.
It's almost like a little bit of like rum raisin molasses that's been cut with orange zest.
Yep.
Because the orange zest brightness just comes in and cuts through all that dark spice, all that dark molasses, and really brightens it up on the nose. And just like, I mean, there's a reason this is my house pour because it's just the perfect sort of digestive, but also, again, I can't stress this enough to people watching or listening. You can find this bottle and it's affordable and it's a very premium whiskey for what you're getting. Because let's face it, a lot of these bottles from whomever you want from single barrels are impossible to find or they cost 20 times as much when you do. I can walk into my liquor store and I can get a bottle of this for 40, 42 bucks depending which state you're in, and I've never had a complaint from anyone I poured it for because the nose alone. I mean, also what's interesting is it gets a little bit creamy already on the nose, which kind of gets you excited for the taste. Like that creaminess, the vanilla creaminess starts coming through, kind of like a rich buttercream, like you get like a brandy butter or something.
Yep. Yeah, I think where the Gentleman Jack on the palate is really soft all the way through with a clean finish. I would say single barrel is rich, right? It has more
Yeah,
weight, more texture all the way through with a longer finish. So
for
you made
that.
it to you, and I'm ready to jump in.
Hmm. It's interesting because there's we've had these tastes before. I always like to talk about like the wave. You're sort of like you're building and building, and you get this like beautiful like Christmas cookies and cake and mulled wine and spiked apple cider and a little bit of eggnog starts coming in there and making things creamy. And then you sort of end in this like cherry chewy tobacco sort of note, but it's still creamy from like the eggnogness of it all, and it combines all to make just this wonderful like undulating flow of a profile. And again, the finish is, I wouldn't call it clean, but I would call it lush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's bold, but not
But
like, oh, you're burning me bold.
right. Right, much longer finish with the single barrel, 100%. And the one thing I will call out about single barrel, I think it's important to note is since it's one barrel at a time, you will have variation of flavor, and you'll have some that the finish is maybe much drier and very oak and tannic driven, and then you'll have some that are sweeter and softer. You're going to get that variation, but it's going to be within that box of what we want as Jack Daniel's single barrel, and so every barrel is approved by our team here at the distillery, and to make sure, obviously, is each barrel is a standalone batch, right? There's no smaller batch in one barrel, so everyone has to be at the quality that we want, and that's part of the appeal of single barrel for me. I love single barrel whiskeys because of that natural
Yeah,
variation.
me too.
Yeah, yeah, we can control so many things in Lynchburg, and our whiskey making team is so good. But at the end of the day, Mother Nature is more powerful, and she
Absolutely.
subtle variation from barrel to barrel that we just can't control.
And I think just there's an interesting comment here that sort of like the elephant in the room with that banana taste. And I feel like that is there, but it's along with so many other things that the more you sort of go back, I don't really get banana on the single barrel at all. I maybe got a little bit on the Gentleman Jack, but for me, even on the Gentleman Jack was more like banana bread.
Hmm.
And I think, not to go into other things we're not tasting here, but like on the Sinatra Select, I get a little bit of like bananas Foster's. It's like that rum flambe thing going on. Um, but talk to a little bit about how you build like different fruit notes in a whiskey like this, and what you look for in those like specific notes, and what you like kind of lean toward or lean away from.
Yeah, well, the banana note is isoamyl acetate, which is, that's an ester that's created. It's really kind of a bit of a drawn out process, but our yeast and fermentation, but because of the way that we mash and ferment with only the natural barley enzymes, it's going to slowly feed the yeast a larger form of fermentable sugar than if we were using a commercially available enzyme, which is done a lot in the industry. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's just different. And point being, when you slow things down by only using that barley enzyme, and you're slowing the rate of fermentation, and so our fermenters, they'll go for a full 7 days a lot of times, and so
Wow,
they,
wow, that's long.
yeah, it's a long time, and so that yeast is not only just making the ethanol, it's also making other forms of alcohol. There's higher alcohols that are made. There's also a lot of natural organic acid that's made in fermentation. And so, if you have alcohols and acids, when they react together, they form esters. And so you start this complexity of different things and how they play with one another, not only through fermentation, but a lot of it gets distilled into the new make whiskey. And then it's also, as it ages, even in the barrel, you're also introducing other natural acids from the barrel itself with these different forms of alcohols. And so now you can start to see this is getting really complex with different natural organics that are made in this process, which leads to all these different textures and flavors and things that you get. And so, I think the banana note with Gentleman Jack, yes, absolutely. You're going to get some of that with Classic Number Seven, yes. You're going to see it varying levels with single barrel because of the single barrel nature, but overall less. And so, because you're getting more wood phenolics, you're getting more wood extract that's competing against that. And then, really, I think too. I mean, there are times where the banana seems to really jump at me as well. Um, but for me, it's like a really ripe green pear. I get a lot of apple notes. Apple
Ooh, yeah, yes.
apricot is also another one that I get. So I think when you really slow down and start to think about the fruit, there's a whole kind of range of how that presents itself. And of course, I'm around it day in and day out and tasted it day in and day out. So I guess I'm pretty well acclimated, I have to admit. But there is
Yeah,
a lot on there, and so there is a lot of fruit notes and floral notes that go on with our whiskeys.
absolutely. And I think it's also worth noting, just for anyone listening out there, is everyone's palate is tuned differently. I mean, we all have a completely different life of and a completely different history of eating and drinking things that we've ate or drank over our lifetimes, and so due to that course, different things are going to be more prominent on our palates than anyone else's. Even between the two of us, like we may have parallels where it's like, oh yeah, chewy cherry tobacco at the end, and we both find that, but we might have gotten to a completely different path to get there, just given I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and you grew up in Tennessee, so there's always going to be different things that people pick up in a nose or a taste or a finish, just based on who they are. And so I think that's important to remember when it's whiskey, but it's also your journey.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. People are just naturally more sensitive to different things, and even the folks here, at the distillery that are tasting. We have teams of people that taste every single day for us, and we have a program when they come in and taste with different samples. They don't know what anything is, right? They're just coming in and comparing. Okay, this is what it should taste like, and here's my different samples that I'm comparing it to. And so we're putting in marker samples and blind samples all the time. And even amongst our whiskey tasting team here at the distillery, some people are just inherently in tune with certain notes more than others.
Right.
It's just, I guess, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. I'm a chemist, trained, but
Right.
I don't know if it's anatomy, if it's just exposure, what it is. But you're exactly right. People experience things in different ways.
Absolutely. And it's sort of I one reason I tend to lean towards Jack Daniel's projects products is that it just hits the right flavor notes for me of like nostalgia, and sort of opening up those keys in my brain that take me to a place I want to go. I think that sort of wraps us up. So what we love to this whole process is about whiskey worth knowing from Reserve Bar. And so since these are two iconic whiskeys, Gentleman Jack and Jack Daniel's Single Barrel. These are the whiskeys that are worth knowing, like in general. So if you're on a whiskey journey, you should really, give these a shot to sort of build your own palate and build your own knowledge of American whiskeys, especially Tennessee whiskey, which, if it is Tennessee's if it is Tennessee's straight whiskey, is a bourbon technically. I remember you guys used to have bourbon on your label. and,
Yeah, there's been all kinds of crazy things on our label over the years if you go back to
oh,
Mr. Times.
yeah,
So, but yes, Tennessee whiskey is bourbon 100%.
yeah.
Um, I like to say all Tennessee whiskey is bourbon, not all bourbon is Tennessee whiskey.
Absolutely. And that's why I love doing these virtual tasting series, because, we can talk with wonderful people like you who give us so much of your time generously, but also talk through great whiskeys that I really do truly believe in my heart people should know. Like I mentioned at the top, I came back to Gentleman Jack about 2 years ago through a blind taste test. And I can tell you, I was there with the biggest whiskey snobs you can imagine, people who only drink scotch, and, the cruise. And unanimously, Gentleman Jack won that blind tasting. And
Yeah,
when I revealed it, there were some hoots and hollers and some shocks, and maybe
yeah.
even some tears.
I love it. I think blind
Yeah.
tasting is the only way to really truly do things. And Zach, I know you do a lot of them, and you do a lot of different things. It's really, and the transparency of how you do things is really nice. That's something that I'm pretty passionate about too. And what we do is the transparency. And I love to put a bottle of Lynchburg made Tennessee whiskey in the lineup.
Oh
I
yeah.
think I love it. It's different, and there's great whiskeys being made all over the country and heck all over the world, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty proud of what we do in Lynchburg. We don't have a lot going on in Lynchburg. The second smallest county in the state of Tennessee. Literally, we're number 94 out of 95 counties in the state.
Wow.
Um, got one stoplight in the whole county. One school, and
Yeah.
there's no shopping malls or restaurants that really stay open past 5 in the afternoon. So there's not much to do but make whiskey, and luckily we're pretty good at making whiskey.
Yeah, I love it down there. And hey, I'm going to see you next month for the Jack. So we'll definitely have to share a dram.
Oh, no doubt about it.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for joining. This has been Whiskey Worth Knowing. Again, Gentleman Jack, Jack Daniel Single Barrel, two whiskeys worth knowing. It's been a great entry into the virtual tasting series. Chris, I can't thank you enough for your time and your patience with giving us this wonderful information. I'll see you soon, sir.
Yep. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Bye bye.